14 pages, yo. 14 pages. Told y'all in the last video, my girl Megan I was waiting on her to bless us, and here we are. Details are a hot ass mess. Alright, you white motherfuckers, all eyes on me. This is the I Refuse podcast. It's Mr. Fox, the I Refuse podcast. I'm back again. Damn, 2 videos in the same day. Y'all must be spoiled at this point. Or as people in Baltimore City pronounce it, spool, like it's a spool of yarn. So, we finally got our hands on the indictment filing. It was filed 9/12 against Sean Combs. So here we go. It says sealed indictment on here, but clearly it's not sealed anymore. Just like I said it wouldn't be in the last video. It was just a moment. It was just a moment of time. So anyway, count 1, racketeering conspiracy. The grand jury charges count 1 for decades. Sean Combs abused, threatened, and coerced women and others around him to fulfill his sexual desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct. To do so, Combs relied on the employees' resources and influence, a multifaceted business empire that he led and controlled, creating a criminal enterprise whose members and associates engaged in and attempted to engage in, among other crimes, sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. Oh, before I continue on, breaking news. Record executive Kevin Liles has resigned from his post at 300 Entertainment. Now, given that it overlaps with this, antennas are up. Ears are tingling. Like you think you might have something to do with it. Anyway, Sean Combs, a.k.a. Puff Daddy, a.k.a. P. Diddy, a.k.a. Diddy, a.k.a. P.D. Love, the defendant, operated his business headquartered at various times in Manhattan and Los Angeles under a variety of United States-based corporate entities, including Bad Boy Entertainment, Combs Enterprise, and Combs Global, collectively the Combs Business. So, those of us that have been outside for a long time are aware of how far Sean's reach is. The Armandale, the clothing, the productions, all that other stuff. So, at all times relevant to this indictment, the defendant engaged in a persistent and pervasive pattern of abuse towards women and other individuals. This abuse was at times verbal, emotional, physical, and sexual. As part of this pattern of abuse, Combs manipulated women to participate in highly orchestrated performances of sexual activity with male commercial sex workers. At times, Combs and others acting in his direction made arrangements for women and commercial sex workers to fly to Combs' location. Combs ensured participation from the women by, among other things, obtaining and distributing narcotics to them, controlling their careers, leveraging his financial support, and threatening to cut off the same, and using intimidation and violence. Physical abuse by the defendant was recurrent and widely known on numerous occasions from at least in or about 2009 and continuing for years. He assaulted women by, among other things, striking, punching, dragging, throwing objects at, and kicking them. These assaults were at times witnessed by others and included one instance at a Los Angeles hotel in or about March 2016, which was captured on video, later publicly reported, where Combs kicked, dragged, and threw a vase at a woman as she was attempting to leave. Those of us with at least 2 brain cells know that they are referring to the hotel surveillance footage that was released recently of Diddy chasing after, striking, and dragging Cassie on a hotel floor that they said that he bought out and it was alleged that they were bought out with money to keep that video private. But it looks like the NDA allegedly expired if it was released. When a member of the hotel security staff intervened, Combs attempted to bribe the staff member to ensure silence. His violence was also not limited to these women. It extended to his employees, witnesses to his abuse, and others. The defendant used the Combs business, including certain employees, to carry out, facilitate, and cover up his abuse and commercial sex. Those employees include security staff, household staff, personal assistants, and high-ranking supervisors and other close associates acted as Combs intermediaries, and their conduct was facilitated and assisted by Combs' control of the Combs business. The Combs Enterprise, they have this like sectioned out, and each section is titled. Whoo, when I tell you, they've been tracking old boy for years, from at least in or about 2008 through on or about the date of filing of this indictment. The defendant and others, known and unknown, were members and associates of a criminal organization. The Combs Enterprise, members and associates of the Combs Enterprise engaged in and attempted to engage in, among other activities, sex trafficking, forced labor, interstate transportation, for purposes of prostitution, coercion, and enticement to engage in prostitution, narcotics offenses, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. I wonder what the arson was. The alleged Kid Cudi truck being blown up? The Combs Enterprise included its leadership, its members, and its associates, constituted an enterprise as defined by Title 18 U.S.C. Section 1961-4. The Combs Enterprise consisted of Sean Combs, the defendant entities within the Combs business included but not limited to Bad Boy Entertainment, Combs Enterprises, and Combs Global, individuals employed by and associated with the Combs business, and others known and unknown. The Combs Enterprise constituted an ongoing organization whose members functioned as a containing unit for a common purpose of achieving the objectives of the Combs Enterprise. The Combs Enterprise was engaged in and its activities affected interstate and foreign commerce. Combs Enterprise operated in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere. At all times relevant to this indictment, the defendant was the leader of the Combs Enterprise. The defendant and others known and unknown participated in unlawful and other activities related to the conduct of the Combs Enterprise affairs. These individuals included certain Combs business employees, such as members of Combs security staff, household staff, personal assistants, and high-ranking supervisors, as well as other close associates of Combs. Purposes of Combs Enterprises. The purpose of the Combs Enterprise included the following: operating a global business in the media, entertainment, and lifestyle industries, including, among other things, record labels, a recording studio, an apparel line, an alcoholic spirits business, a marketing agency, and television network and media company. Preserving, protecting, promoting, and enhancing the power, reputation, and brand of Sean Combs, the defendant, as a musician, entrepreneur, and figure in the entertainment industry. Enriching members and associates of the enterprise, including its leader, Combs, and in particular those who demonstrated loyalty to Combs and willingness to conceal his crimes. Preserving, protecting, promoting, and enhancing the power of the Combs Enterprise, including the power of its leader, through violence, use of firearms, threats of violence, coercion, and verbal, emotional, physical, and sexual abuse. Fulfilling personal desires of him, particularly those related to Combs, his sexual gratification, including through the exploitation of women and the use of commercial sex workers, enabling Combs and other members and associates of the Combs Enterprise to engage in unlawful acts of violence, including sexual violence, sex trafficking, forced labor, interstate transportation for purpose of prostitution, coercion and enticement to engage in prostitution, narcotics distribution, and other crimes and concealing the commissions of such acts. Securing absolute loyalty from members of the Combs Enterprise, including those acts of violence and threats, and protecting the Combs Enterprise and its members and associates, including Combs, from detection, prosecution by law enforcement authorities through acts of intimidation, manipulation, bribery, threats of retaliation against individuals who witness the crimes committed by members and associates of the enterprise. Means and methods of the enterprise. Among the means and methods by the defendant and other members and associates of the Combs Enterprise conducted and participated in the conduct of the affairs of the Combs Enterprise, including the following. Combs and other members and associates of the enterprise wielded power and prestige of his role at the Combs business to intimidate, threaten, and lure female victims into Combs' orbit. Y'all make this nigga sound like he's Saturn or some shit. Often under the pretense of a romantic relationship, Combs then used force, threats of force, coercion to cause victims to engage in extended sex acts with the male commercial sex workers that Combs referred to as, among other things, freak offs. Yo, that's been swirling for a while. Now it's confirmed. Freak offs were elaborate and produced sexual performances that Combs arranged, directed, masturbated during, and often electronically recorded. In arranging these freak offs, Combs, with the assistance of members and associates of the Combs Enterprise, transported and caused to be transported commercial sex workers across state lines and internationally. Freak offs occurred regularly, sometimes lasted multiple days, and often involved multiple commercial sex workers. During freak offs, Combs distributed a variety of controlled substances to victims, in part to keep the victims obedient and compliant. Sometimes unbeknownst to the victims, Combs kept videos he filmed of victims engaging in sex acts with commercial sex workers. After freak offs, Combs and the victims typically received IV fluids to recover from the physical exertion and drug use. Hey, yo! This motherfucker make Rick James seem like John Pope II. God damn. But see, money and access. That last line is fucking, yo. He was wearing these bitches out. Like it was a cult in the desert. Yo. Yo. That is wild. Members and associates of the Combs Enterprise, including high-ranking supervisors, security staff, household staff, personal assistants, and other Combs business employees, facilitated freak-offs by, among other things, booking hotel rooms for the freak-offs, stocking the hotel rooms in advance with the required freak-off supplies, including controlled substances, baby oil, lubricant, extra linens, and lighting, cleaning the hotel rooms after the freak-offs to try to mitigate room damage, arranging for travel for victims, commercial sex workers, and Combs to and from freak-offs, resupplying Combs with requested supplies, delivering large sums of cash to Combs to pay the commercial sex workers, and scheduling the delivery of IV fluids. In or about March 2024, during a search of Combs' residences in Miami, Florida, and Los Angeles, California, the law enforcement seized various freak-off supplies, including narcotics and more than 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant. Nigga, I'm 42, and I'm nowhere near 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant? See, this is why Johnson & Johnson will never go out of business. See, people done latched on to that last line, 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant. And it's like, you gotta think, what kind? Because if it's the wrong kind, you can keep it. Like, if it's, I'm on here talking like it's just you and me. If it's KY, you might as well get sandpaper. You might as well get sandpaper and rub it on your dick and your beans and the bean down there. Like, or maybe you had gun oil, or Swiss Army, or Swiss Navy. You know, word on the curb is that, you know, Puffy got puffy for dudes. That is wild though. Like 1,000. Where do you want to keep 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant? God damn. Combs of I can't even get my words together. Combs subjected victims to physical, emotional, and verbal abuse that caused the victims to engage in freak-offs. Combs maintained control over his victims through, among other things, physical violence, promises of career opportunities, granting and threatening to withhold financial support, and by other coercive means, including tracking their whereabouts, dictating the victims' appearance, monitoring their medical records, controlling their housing, and supplying them with controlled substances. During and separate from freak-offs, Combs, among other things, hit, kicked, threw objects at, and dragged victims, at times by their hair. These assaults often resulted in injuries that took days or weeks to heal. Combs also threatened victims' careers and livelihoods, including if they resisted participating in freak-offs. It makes me wonder if there were other artists. All right, so there was a time where he had like a lot of artists signed to Bad Boy Records that did not have material release. Like they would be in the somebody in the audience go back to the Puff Daddy and I think it's like Puff Daddy and the Family album. It's the one that has Let's Get It, Bad Boy for Life, and Diddy on it. If you open the jacket, there's a black and white photo of him sitting in a chair, what looks to be at the same house that got raided in March, with artists that give the appearance that they're on the label, and I think some of them make features on the album. But they never had music come out, with the exception of Sherry Dennis, who she herself said he paid her $500,000. But now that I think about it, I'm like, given that this dude is known to like kind of allegedly cheat his artists, why would he give Sherry Dennis $500,000? Anyway, victims believe they cannot refuse Combs' demands without risking their financial or job security, or without repercussions in the form of physical or emotional abuse. Combs also used the sensitive, embarrassing, and incriminating recordings that he made during freak-offs as collateral to ensure the continued obedience and silence of the victims. Members and associates of the Combs enterprise, including Combs security personnel, at times carried firearms. On more than one occasion, Combs himself carried or brandished firearms to intimidate and threaten others, including victims of and witnesses to his abuse. In or about March 2024, during searches of Combs' residence in Miami, Florida, and Los Angeles, California, law enforcement seized firearms and ammunition, including 3 AR-15s with defaced serial numbers, as well as a drum magazine. Members and associates of the Combs enterprise enabled Combs' control over victims by following his directions regarding financial payments to victims, advancing or suppressing the victim's career opportunities, and acquiring the controlled substance Combs used to keep the victims compliant. Members and associates of the enterprises at times witnessed Combs' violence towards the victims or the victims' injuries caused by Combs without intervening. Instead, members and associates of the enterprise helped conceal the violence and abuse by, among other things, assisting Combs in monitoring and preventing victims from leaving locations such as hotels or Combs' residences. These occasions include instances in which a victim can be required to remain in hiding, sometimes for several days at a time, to recover from injuries Combs inflicted without being publicly observed. Members and associates of the enterprises also assisted Combs in locating and contacting victims who attempted to flee his abuse. When employees witnesses to his abuse or others threaten Combs' authorities or reputation, Combs and members and associates of the enterprise engage in acts of violence, threats of financial and reputational harm, and verbal abuse. These acts of violence include kidnapping and arson. In additional multiple occasions, Combs through both objects and people, as well as hit, drag, choke, shove others. When Combs' authority or reputation was threatened by the possibility of negative publicity or legal law enforcement action against him, including in or about late 2023, following public allegations of Combs' crimes, Combs and members and associates of the enterprise pressured witnesses and victims, including through attempted bribery, to stay silent and not report what they experienced or knew to law enforcement. On phone calls, Combs and other members and associates of the enterprise, among other things, provided these victims and witnesses with a false narrative of events in an effort to conceal Combs' crimes. Combs caused these calls to be recorded on at least 2 occasions. Now down to the racketeering conspiracy. From at least in or about 2008 through on or about the date of the filing of this indictment in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere, the defendant and others known and unknown, being persons employed by and associated with the enterprise, described in paragraphs 6 through 12 of this indictment, engaged in the activities of which affected interstate and foreign commerce, knowingly combined, conspired, confederated, and agreed together and with each other to violate the racketeering laws of the United States, to conduct and participate directly and indirectly in the conduct of the affairs of the Combs enterprise through a pattern of racketeering activity, as the term is defined in Title 18 United States Code, multiple acts involving kidnapping chargeable under the provisions of California Penal Code state law, multiple acts involving arson under that same penal code, multiple acts of bribery charging under multiple acts indictable related to transportation and inducement to travel for purposes of prostitution and other illegal sexual activities, relating to sexual trafficking, relating to forced labor, relating to tampering with a witness, victim, or an informant, conspiracy, multiple offenses involving the possession with intent to distribute or distribution of narcotics and controlled substances, including cocaine, oxycodone, alprazolam, that's a new one to me, meth, bromo, is that dimetap? Dimethoxypenthethylamine, gamma hydroxybutyric acid, and ketamine. Wow. It was part of the conspiracy that the defendant agreed that a conspirator who committed at least 2 acts of racketeering activity in the conduct of the affairs of the Combs enterprise. Notice of special sentencing factor. From at least in or about 2009 up to and including in or about 2018 in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere, as part of this agreement to conduct and participate in the conduct of the affairs of the Combs enterprise through the pattern of racketeering activity, the defendant knowingly recruited, entice, harbor, transport, provide, obtain, advertise, maintain, patronize, and solicit by any means a person knowing and in reckless disregard of the fact that means of force, threats of force, fraud, and coercion, as described in Title 18, and any combination by such means would be used to cause a person to engage in a commercial sex act in violation of Title 18. Count 2. Sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion. Victim 1. From at least in or about 2009 up to including in or about 2018, the Southern District of New York and elsewhere, the defendant in and affecting interstate and foreign commerce knowingly recruited and solicited by any means a person knowing and in reckless disregard of the fact that means of force, threats of force, coercion. Count 3, transportation to engage in prostitution. From at least in or about 2009, the defendant Combs transported, aided, and abetted, knowingly transported individual in interstate and foreign commerce with the intent that the individual engaged in prostitution, attempted, aided, and abetted, and willfully caused the same, to wit, transported, aided, willfully caused the transportation of female victims and commercial sex workers, and in interstate and foreign commerce on multiple occasions with the intent that they engage in prostitution. As a result of the offense alleged, this is forfeiture allegations in count one of this indictment. The defendant shall forfeit to the United States by any and all interest the defendant acquired or maintained in violation of Title 18, interest, securities of, claims against, and property or contractual rights of any kind affording a source of influence over the enterprise named and described herein, which he established, operated, controlled, conducted, and participated in. Hey, yo. I've long said on the I Refuse podcast, whether it's here or on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, that once a straight rich man has tried everything that's considered vanilla, he has had as much of the cat as he possibly can stand. You know, he starts to blur the lines a little bit and tries other things. But on top of that, when you have the access and the means and can travel as you please, then you add that element to it. You see shit you've never seen stateside. You've seen tips and tricks and twosomes, threesomes, foursomes, moresomes, and you have like a romantic, fantastical layer to your life. And who's going to say no to a mogul, right? I still can't get over 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant. But yo, when you out here recording people without their consent, your house in Los Angeles, and more than likely Miami too, brought the who's who from not only like movies and music, but also like possibly politicians, very powerful people, all of which were probably married. They get to your house and freak offs happen. Now, I said a few videos back on the Surviving Diddy series over here that New York City, or the state of New York, was calling witnesses. And this was after the raid. So the next part that will be interesting will be, who did they call? I'm willing to bet it's a lot of... There's a black book. There's like a scarlet letter book or something that has a list of names that investigators saw in the videos. This is wild. 1,000 bottles of baby oil lubricant. See, how do you know? Like, Hollywood has been Hollywood for years, right? You know, somebody that's been outside since the days of Rick James and, you know, tying up women and coercing them and bringing them to the room under the pretense, oh, we just gonna fuck. It is an extra layer of freakiness and scariness when you go to somebody's house under the pretense that it's going to be a party. You come with a woman that's your date, or it's, you know, there are women there. And lo and behold, you're in one of these rooms, and you think it's just the two of y'all, and it turns out to be cameras. And not only that, this fool's in the corner verbalizing commands and directing y'all to do certain things. What the eyes wide shut is going on? Like, I have nothing against a person's yum, you know what I mean? And I'm not ignorant to the fact that it's possible that the narrative was different when money was involved and NDAs were in place. And now that this person has said something, the narrative changes to fit that. Multiple things can be true at the same time. But there's no getting around with this guy. You know, the surveillance video footage. And when you add sex trafficking, and they've been tracking your ass, as early as, they said, 2008, 2009 was the earliest year? I don't even remember all that I was doing in 2008, 2009. Like I said, they didn't just start tracking him this year. And one thing about New York City, they know how to put on big moments. I'm just curious what the witnesses list is. Who's on there? Yo. These are some major federal crimes. I don't think he's going to get out of this one. Sorry to these women that were abused and brutalized and coerced and forced and intimidated. Sorry to the men that faced the same fate. If you didn't do what he tells you. This is wild, yo. Oh, and you know, don't come over here and try to demonetize me, because this shit is legit. This is legit. Thank you to the other Meg Thee Stallion, Man Cunnif from Twitter, for blessing us with this. It's officially unsealed, and the details are out. And this is the I Refuse podcast. Like I said, I'm going to keep tracking this and following this. Since y'all love it so much, I be getting the analytics back. Until then, keep it locked. I Refuse podcast available everywhere. Season 6 has already started. Usual Suspects podcast has started. And I Refuse podcast After Dark is available. And also the YouTube channel. Get those follows and subscriptions to the YouTube channel going. Follow us on Twitter at I Refuse Podcast. Link is everywhere on our socials. And you should have seen the information over here at the beginning of the video. And we will catch you guys later. Fendi, like the bag. This is the I Refuse.